What's going on, guys? Curtis back in the shop working on the Dakota. So I've got a set of new Viking front double adjustable berserkers that I've had. They're revalved. Prior right now we're running Warriors. I was having issues with the front end coming up too much, so called Viking, talked to a guy named Cliff. So we got some a better set with different valving. Should kind of help get the suspension under control for the front side of the truck, and the berserkers, so they're also going to match the rears. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just briefly go over that. We're going to talk about the front suspension a little bit more in depth, I guess, give you just a better look at it. Just remember the part numbers and stuff I'm going to give you guys, they work for my setup. It doesn't mean you're going to work for yours, so you still need to kind of do your research, as I go through and I show you some of these things. So I'm gonna get this thing jacked up on the one side. I'm gonna pop the wheel off, and then we'll talk about some of this stuff. All right, guys, let's take a look at this thing real quick. So here's what we got going on with the front suspension. Upper and lower control arms. Tubular unit, the Dakota RT guys did a group buy with a fabricator, I believe in Canada, and I bought a set. Now, they worked out pretty good. I think I've got about 7 inches of front end travel, which you can see the tubular upper. Now I did have a bar in it that I cut out because it wasn't allowing the thing to move like I needed to. And you can see the lower. Now I had him machine the lower, or make the lower without a pocket for the spring, because we're running this hybrid coilover, as you can see in there. There's a couple things to note if you decide you want to drag race with your truck. Those upper and lower control arms, they should be able to move very, very, very easily. I know the factory ones do not. You want all the suspension articulation if you're trying to do what I'm doing. Like I said, them factory ones, they just don't move real great. So what I ended up doing for the bottom, even when I put these back in, see where the bolts go right there. I know it's hard to see here. What I did is not only did I grease them, but I didn't tighten them up all the way, like I didn't kill them. I actually slid the bolt through and then took the nut and took a chisel. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's see here. I took a chisel like this and basically made what I call a captured nut, where I took that chisel. I want to show you this. I took that chisel, put it on a flat bench, and I whacked it with a hammer there, and it almost made a plus sign. And what that does is actually smashes like the first thread, and then it kind of makes like I said, like a captured nut. So when I ran that thing on there, I did that, and I also used Loctite. And what it allowed me to do was tighten it, but not to the point where it's binding up, so those control arms still float. So when I take this thing apart, it's actually really easy to move the control arms up and down. Another thing to note too, if you haven't seen my other videos, I did a video on how to swap to 5-lug. You should check that out. Pretty easy process. So, like I said, Viking hybrid coilovers. Let's show you a part number. Now, granted, that's the part number right there. Now that part number is for the revalve set. Now obviously we're missing a spring, and I'm gonna show you more on that, once I get that thing out of the truck. But they call them hybrid coilovers because they use a tie bar on the bottom and they use a regular shock stud on top. They are adjustable. Now, when we ordered the springs for the truck, we put it on the corner scales. We got the front to rear weight. Now, we ordered a spring that will actually help. It's not as stiff as a factory spring. So it's a 10-inch spring, right? And a 10-inch spring, for drag racing, you want somewhere between 25 and 30% compression on that spring, okay? Because as far as like stored energy and stuff goes. So that's what helped gets the front of the truck, between the spring choice and the fact that all the control arms move freely and nothing's binding up, helps to get the truck up. So we actually used a 550 rate spring. So that means is it takes 550 pounds to take and compress that spring 1 inch. Now again, what that did is you can use these with your factory control arms, like I said, you still want to make sure they're freed up. You might run into a hard time with the uppers. The uppers are super stiff. But you can use a 550, most likely get away with a 550 rate spring just like I did with this setup. And if you want the part number, I'll get you the part number for the Warriors. Like I said, because these are the berserker, there's more expensive revalves. But you can do that. It's going to lower your truck a little bit, but it's going to be fairly bouncy because that spring rate is for drag racing. Now, you might be I don't know if they make like a 650, 750 rate spring. It would be more like factory. But the chances are it's not really going to lower the truck. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what it'll do. Because for the stance I wanted, the spring rate and the control arms and everything worked out good for me. That's why I was telling you guys, like, I'm going to give you these part numbers, but I want you to, use that sparingly. But again, it will work because obviously I've done it. So let me pull this apart real quick. I'm going to get that spring out of there, and I'm going to show you the part number on that spring. So just hold on just a second. Okay, that quick. Let's pull it out. So part number for hybrid coil-over Warrior Series. Warrior Series, the Berserker Series with the better valving. Just a side note. So your spring. So this is a 10-inch spring. Most likely what you're going to want, and make note that the top of this spring is flat. I think they have, if I remember right, there's two different styles, and one of them was flat. So that's something you guys need to take note on. Now, as far as the rate goes, there it is right there. You can see that. That's the part number. 10-inch spring, 550 rate. That is what I'm running on this truck. Again, these worked out great. But just ready for a revalve. So there's, like I said, there's your part numbers for you. I wanted to show you as what I was talking about as far as the control arm. And you can see it. I want to show you something. See how easy that moves? That is what you're looking for. You want that thing to let that truck, the front end of that truck, or whatever, not even truck, whatever you're working on that you want to drag race, you want that thing, the front end of that thing to move. So again, just to recap, this 550 is 10-inch spring. It compresses at almost 3 inches. But that plays into the front end weight of your truck. I know most of you guys aren't turbo. I kind of figured by the time we add the turbo kit, but we lose some weight off some other things, a little bit of back and forth there. To be honest, if you wanted to drag race your truck, 550 rate spring would be a pretty safe bet. And part number for the Warrior hybrids that I use, but you still want to kind of check everything, do your measurements, pull your measurements, because what you don't want to happen is you over lengthening, or burying the shaft in anything that's going to damage the shock, right? Burying the shaft in it, pulling the shaft too far out. Like, I had to take all that into account when I set this up. Obviously, these things, I can't remember how long these things have been on here now, but I got all my measurements right because I haven't run into any issues with the stuff. But yeah, so part numbers on that stuff. I'm not going to film me putting it back together because it is what it is. That's pretty much my tips and tricks when it comes to that. Not very complicated. Again, you can use your factory control arms. Oh, you will have to drill the control arm out to accept the bolt for the bottom for the tie bar. Keep that in mind. Can't really think of anything else. Actually, if you look way over in the shop, my factory control arms are still there. But again, as far as the front suspension goes, this is what I've got going on. I'm going to put this bad boy back together. I don't know if you guys won't be able to hear me. I'm going to put this thing back together, and then I'm going to take it down to the gas station and throw some fuel in the cell, as I really haven't got a chance to drive it yet. Like I said, obviously you've seen it been torn apart all winter. So let me get after that, and hopefully there's a testing tune today. Obviously, we're not going to make that. My Pro bracket radials I ordered said they were on back order, but they're actually showing up this week. So whatever happened there. So that'll be exciting to get some new, different style tire. Hopefully it's a little bit more forgiving for the truck. Yeah, and if you have any more questions, put them down in the comments. I'll do my best to answer you guys. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.